So what any good knitter does is, my immediate thought was, I now knit and I've got 55 acres. So having my own sheep so I can make my own yarn totally made sense to me. I'd already done it with chickens. I took my chickens my eggs from like $10 a carton to about $85 a carton. And that's just sort of how I roll. Like when I get into a craft, I go all in. So I wanted to knit a sweater, and I particularly wanted to knit from sheep that I knew. I wanted to know their name. That was my thing, is I wanted to go to a farm and buy the wool and know, to be able to pet the sheep and that. So the logical thing was, I just needed 3 sheep in my backyard, because I knew, being a knitter, I didn't need tons and tons of sheep. I only needed 3 to be able to make, a nice sweater. So we had already had goats and chickens at the time. And my late husband, Paul, had said, he's like, I don't really want to add sheep. We travel all the time. So I talked to my son, Luke, the owner of the business, who lives a quarter mile up the road from me, into getting 3 sheep. And my buy was, if you keep sheep for me, I will knit you a sweater. And I did work on that sweater this week. It is 5 years later, and it's like, this big, but in my defense, it is bottom up, which we already know is pretty demoralizing of a process to start bottom up. Stockinette, brown, and Luke has about a 56-inch chest. So that's a lot of bottom up stockinette knitting. And the last thing I want to do after wrangling sheep in a business all day is sit down in the dark with that brown yarn. So that's that. My husband quickly was like, wow, you spend a lot of money on yarn. Maybe we should have a yarn company, because he was facing retirement, and he, as a former CEO, he just didn't want to stop working. So I was like, I don't think that that's going to be something that's sustainable, but I would also love more sheep. So sure, let's do that. That sounds great. So in 2020, Luke's 3 sheep went to 27 sheep, because my husband and son traveled across state lines in April of 2020 without a license plate on the trailer, because if you remember, the Secretary of States were closed, without the vet documentation the sheep needed to travel across state lines, because none of the vets would come out and do that kind of a thing. But they brought the first 24 Cormos back from Minnesota. And that's pretty much how it was started.